Ever find yourself wondering, do we all see the world the same way? Like, is my blue the same as your blue? Well, that's kind of where we're headed today, diving into this conversation between Dr. A, he's got this awesome YouTube channel, by the way, and a student who's clearly got a knack for the big questions. We're talking perception, how we get stuck in our own heads, and finding your own path.
It's funny you say that about the big questions because this student jumps right into one that's had philosophers scratching their heads for centuries. Why do we seem to experience reality in such similar ways?
Right. Like we all look at a chair and go, yep, that's a chair. Well, mostly anyway.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. Dr. Ray could have gone the easy route, talking about shared biology, evolution, all that.
Yeah.
But he flips the script, points out how each of us has this unique lens shaped by our individual experiences, our senses, even our SOCUS, that colors how we see the world.
Okay, so I'm picturing two people looking at the same thing, but their perceptions are wildly different. What's an example of that?
He uses this great analogy. Imagine one person sees a chicken, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their immediate thought is dinner. Another person, maybe someone who raises chickens, they see this complex creature, a being with its own kind of intelligence. Same chicken, totally different realities playing out in their minds.
Whoa, that is such a simple example, but it really clicks. We're not just passively absorbing the world around us, are we? We're actively creating our own interpretations.
Bingo! And that gets to the core of what Dr. A is all about, helping people become more aware of the subtle ways we filter our experiences, those unconscious biases shaping our realities.
So how do we do that? Become more aware, I mean.
Well, this is where it gets kind of deep. He talks about surrender. And I know, that word can sound a little too zen sometimes, but stick with me.
Oh, you've got my attention.
He's not talking about giving up on your goals or anything like that. It's about surrendering to the present moment, letting go of that need to control everything, which, let's face it, is pretty much impossible anyway.
Okay, I've heard that before, the whole be present thing, but easier said than done, right? Our minds are constantly buzzing to-do lists, that awkward thing I said 5 years ago, what to have for dinner. How do you just shut all that off?
Right, and he gets that. Dr. A actually compares it to learning to ride a bike. Remember how much mental effort that took at first? Balancing, pedaling, trying not to faceplant.
Oh yeah, and the fear. Don't forget the sheer terror of falling.
Exactly. But with practice, it becomes almost automatic, right? You're no longer overthinking every little movement. You're just riding. And that's what surrendering to the present moment is like. It's about training your mind to find that state of flow, that effortless being.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection here. So how does this whole surrender thing tie back to our perceptions?
Well, when we're stuck in our heads, obsessing over the past or worrying about the future, we miss out on what's right in front of us.
We're so busy trying to direct the movie that we forget to actually watch it.
Exactly. And that's where those unconscious filters really take hold. But when we surrender to the present moment, when we let go of that iron grip on how we think things should be, something pretty amazing happens.
What's that?
Our perceptions, they start to shift. We become more aware of the beauty around us, the complexity, the interconnectedness of it all. It's like seeing the world with fresh eyes, like that first bike ride where you finally find your balance.
Okay, I love that analogy, but let's be real. We can't exactly go for a bike ride every time our minds start racing. What are the more practical ways to put this into practice?
He talks about finding inspiration in things like Tibetan prayer flags.
Okay, hold on. Prayer flags, bike riding, surrender.
Oh.
I'm starting to feel like I need a map.
Don't worry, it all connects, I promise.
Yeah.
He's not saying you have to become a Tibetan Buddhist or anything, but he uses those flags, each one fluttering in the wind, as an example, right? Each one represents a prayer, an intention sent out into the universe. They're a physical reminder to let go, to trust that some things are beyond our control.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
And he encourages people to find their own rituals, their own symbols that embody this idea of surrender. It could be something as simple as taking a few deep breaths before you start your day, maybe keeping a gratitude journal.
Or even just taking a moment to actually appreciate a beautiful sunset without mentally planning out your grocery list.
Exactly. It's about finding what resonates with you, what helps quiet that mental chatter and bring you back to the here and now. And in that space, that's where the good stuff happens. That's where Dr. A suggests true clarity, true understanding can emerge.
So we're creating our own little rituals, finding those things that bring us back to center. I like it. But this student you mentioned, they're not messing around, are they? We're talking about the Avatamsaka Sutra now, which, and I'm not going to lie, I had to Google that one.
Yeah, not exactly beach reading. Even Dr. A admits it's next level stuff. More like marinating in these profound ideas than getting a quick answer.
There's that marinade metaphor again. So how does he even begin to guide the student through this dense philosophical text? Seems like it'd be easy to get lost in the weeds.
Totally. And Dr. A, in his typical way, just keeps it real with the student. He's like, look, I can't explain it all. The Dalai Lama, sure, he's got it down. Me, not so much.
He's got such a refreshing honesty, especially when he's talking about these really heady topics.
Exactly. That's what makes him such a great teacher, right? Instead of trying to force understanding, he encourages the student to just be curious, to approach the sutra with an open mind. He even compares it to walking through a mist.
Okay, yeah, I remember that from the outline we were looking at before. But how does that even relate to reading this? Sutra, help me out here.
Okay, think about it. When you walk through mist, it's not like you're suddenly soaked, right? But over time, you feel that subtle moisture seeping in, you get a little bit wetter, and eventually you realize you're surrounded by it. That's kind of how the sutra works, according to Dr. A. It might not all click at once, but its wisdom, those core ideas, can kind of seep into your consciousness over time, transforming you in ways you might not even realize right away.
Okay, I like that. It's not about immediate comprehension. It's about letting those ideas kind of get under your skin.
Exactly. And one of the big ones Dr. A keeps coming back to is this image of the lotus flower. Huge symbol in Buddhism.
I do remember reading something about the lotus. It's a beautiful flower and all, but what's the deeper meaning there?
So the lotus, as Dr. A explains it, represents this beautiful idea that purity, like real, genuine purity, can come from the most unexpected places. It blooms in muddy water, right? But its petals, they stay clean, untouched by all that muck. It's a powerful reminder that we all have this potential for spiritual growth, for enlightenment, even when life feels messy, even when it feels like we're surrounded by,
I love that. It's such a hopeful image, and it really connects back to that idea of surrender we were talking about earlier. Even when things feel chaotic, there's always this potential for beauty and clarity to emerge. We just have to be open to it.
Absolutely. And Dr. A points out how the sutra uses the lotus, along with other cool images like Indra's net, this vast interconnected web of jewels to illustrate how everything's connected. Every action we take, every thought we have, it creates these ripples that go out and impact the world around us.
It's amazing how these ancient texts, they can still feel so relevant today. I mean, interconnectedness, mindfulness, the power of the present, these are themes popping up everywhere.
Speaks to something universal, right? This deep human need to find meaning, connection, to understand our place in it all.
Totally. But then the conversation takes this interesting turn. The student brings up something they saw on social media, this whole idea of manifesting things with your thoughts, which, let's be real, it's everywhere these days. But I'm really curious to hear how Dr. A responds to that.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from that one bit, calls it out as wishful thinking, and actually cautions against the potential harm in believing that simply wishing for something will make it happen.
I can see where he's coming from. It's one thing to set intentions, to visualize your goals and work towards them, but to say that someone manifested their illness or some other hardship because of negative thoughts, that feels like a dangerous path to go down.
Exactly. And Dr. A is very clear. Our thoughts have power, for sure, but not that kind of direct causal power. He actually shares this story about a secretary he knew back during the real estate bubble. She got totally caught up in this whole manifesting wealth thing.
Ooh, okay, tell me more about this secretary. This is getting good.
So she was convinced that if she just visualized herself owning this mansion, driving a fancy car, it would magically appear. Started spending money she didn't even have, racking up credit card debt because, hey, her future wealth was guaranteed, right?
Oh no, this is not going to end well, is it?
Sadly, no. The bubble burst like they always do, and she lost everything. Dr. A uses this story as a cautionary tale about the dangers of confusing wishful thinking with true manifestation.
It's a good reminder that while optimism and positive thinking are important, they can't exist in a vacuum. They've got to be grounded in reality.
100%. And this leads to a really interesting discussion about the difference between jealousy and envy.
Okay, now you've got my attention. I feel like most people use those words interchangeably. How does Dr. A differentiate them?
So he sees jealousy as a natural human emotion, something that can even be motivating, believe it or not. It's that feeling you get when you see someone else achieve something you desire. It can light a fire under you, push you to work harder for your own goals. Envy, on the other hand, that's a whole different beast.
In what way? How's it different?
Envy's not just about wanting what someone else has. It's about wanting them to not have it. It's resentment, it's bitterness, this desire to see others torn down instead of focusing on lifting yourself up.
Wow. Yeah, that is a really important distinction.
And Dr. A doesn't mince words. He sees envy as a spiritual dead end. He actually jokes, well, half jokes, that envy and a lack of humor are signs of severe psychopathology.
Yikes. He doesn't hold back, does he?
He's seen the damage those kinds of negative emotions can do. But on a lighter note, he's also quick to point out that there are many paths to enlightenment. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay. He even suggests different books and authors depending on your personality.
So he's like a spiritual matchmaker now, finding the right book for the right seeker.
Exactly. He mentions Carlos Castaneda for younger guys who might be drawn to a more, shall we say, energetic path, the Tao Te Ching, for those who like to really dive deep into philosophy, and of course the Avatamsaka Sutra for those ready to go all in on Buddhist teachings.
It's about finding what speaks to you, what resonates with your soul.
Exactly. And he's very clear that no matter what path you choose, the foundation of any true spiritual practice boils down to
Don't leave me hanging. What's the foundation he's talking about? What's the common thread that runs through all these different paths to enlightenment?
kindness. Straight up. He actually calls it a religion of kindness and emphasizes that it goes beyond any one belief system. It's about making the choice to act with compassion, with empathy in every interaction, in every corner of your life.
It's funny, we often think about spiritual growth as this very personal, internal thing, but he's really highlighting the importance of action, of how we treat each other out in the world.
Exactly. And it circles back to that idea of interconnectedness we were talking about earlier, right? Dr. A firmly believes that true enlightenment isn't about checking out of life, becoming some detached observer. It's about being present, engaging with the world, but with an open heart, with his willingness to see the good in everyone, even when it's hard.
It's about recognizing that we're all part of this grand tapestry, right? Our actions, even the small ones, they have an impact.
Absolutely. He even gets into this whole conversation with the student about a tricky family situation, something involving an aunt who's going through a lot, and how to balance compassion with making tough decisions. It's real life stuff.
Yeah, those real life situations can be so messy, can't they? You want to be supportive, but sometimes there are no easy answers.
And Dr. A acknowledges that. He's not about offering these cookie-cutter solutions. Instead, he encourages the student to approach the situation with both wisdom and compassion to find that balance.
There's that balance again. It's about finding that sweet spot between getting swept away by your emotions and just shutting them down completely.
Exactly. And I love this. He actually says something like compassion without insight. That can actually be a dangerous thing. But then he flips it. Wisdom without compassion, useless.
Ooh, that is a good one. I'm stealing that. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into perception, obsession, finding our own paths, what's the one thing you hope listeners take away from this whole conversation between Dr. A and the student?
For me, it's that spark of possibility, that reminder that we're not just passive passengers in our own lives, right? When we can choose to see things differently, to cultivate a sense of peace, to create a life that truly resonates with us.
It's about being open to new ideas, questioning those old assumptions, and maybe, just maybe, trying out some new rituals or practices that bring us back to center, back to ourselves.
And never underestimate the power of kindness. It's its own form of spiritual practice, wouldn't you say? Something we can all tap into, no matter where we are in our journeys.
Beautifully said. So, to all our listeners out there, if this conversation sparked something in you, don't let that flame die out. Take a page from Dr. A's book, or maybe a whole chapter from that Avatamsaka Sutra. It might feel like a walk in the mist at times, but you never know what hidden gems you might find along the way. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.